Hello, let's go ahead and get started with JenTalk 3. Quantitative research is fun. What is quantitative research? I have a quote by Aliaga and Gunderson from 2000. Quantitative research is explaining phenomena by collecting numerical data that are analyzed using mathematically based methods, in particular statistics. So quantitative data can be counted. What proportion of a status group are male or Hispanic or homosexual, or you fill in the blank for the demographic? The proportion or percentage is what makes it numeric. What is the median or the mean or the mode household income in a specific community? That is a value that can be quantified, therefore it's quantitative data and a part of quantitative research. How frequently does a behavior occur when certain conditions are present? Counting the number of times that something happens is quantitative data and a part of quantitative research. Are two variables correlated with one another in a statistically significant way? If you're asking that question, then you are looking to do quantitative research. Correlations are quantitative. Don't fear quantitative research. Oftentimes my students in social sciences, education, and human services are concerned about quantitative research because they know that it is possible that there are some complicated statistics that they could be asked to do if they're looking for multiple analyses of variance or complicated correlations. But quantitative research is not something that you should fear. In fact, we do it all the time at home, at work, even when we're watching the news or reading the newspaper. We engage in quantitative reasoning. Simple math can be enough to do quantitative research. Most quantitative data can be analyzed using simple math like averages, frequencies, and finding midpoints. Demographic data like gender, race, income, political affiliation, religious affiliation, etc. all illustrate or they draw a picture of the sample that you've studied. We don't usually think of numbers as illustrating or drawing pictures, but if you think about it, if someone says to you that 61% of the U.S. Senate is comprised of women, but 51% of the U.S. population is comprised of women, you can easily and immediately envision the fact that there are more people than what is represented in society in terms of the male-female ratio. There are more women in the Senate on average than there are in the average in society, if that were the case. In fact, it's more like the opposite. About 30% of those who are in the U.S. Senate are women. But it allows you, the quantitative data, when easily explained, like in percentages, proportions, frequencies, give you a sense for what you're picturing when you're looking at a sample or a population. If someone said to you that after children view violent behavior, they are 10 times more likely to react in a negative and aggressive way than children who do not watch violent behavior in TV or on media, for example, you have sort of an image of what might be happening. Numbers can actually draw pictures, and quantitative data does that for us. Numbers can provide quick and simple descriptors of what is happening with your study sample, like the average grade in a test in a class. If I tell you that the average grade on the pretest in the class is a 62%, you immediately can picture a D. Or frequency in which a group abandons an assistive technology device type. If we were to say that teens are 10 times more likely, or 60 out of 100 of all teens are more likely to abandon a device, an AT device, than adults over the age of 25, you can picture that. Correlations can tell us if two or things are really related to one another in a significant way, rather than us just drawing conclusions that they might be. So for example, if I were to explain to you the positive correlation that as the outdoor temperature increases, ice cream sales increase, you can picture that. You can imagine what I'm talking about just by using quantitative or numeric data. You can keep it simple in your studies. You do not have to do an exclusively quantitative research study, and even if you do, you can keep it simple. Plan for the inclusion always in your research of demographics, measures of central tendency, like mean, median, and mode, and frequencies. All three of these are typically relevant in sociological or human service studies. An exception might be case studies. If you're really looking at only one case, you may not spend much time talking about demographics, certainly not the proportion of people who represent certain demographic groups. You might use averages. You may say that early on in the case study's experience, they averaged X number of times in which they did something well or right. And over time, as the counseling sessions took place, the average number of times that they experienced anxiety decreased. Also, in terms of frequencies, it could be that you're measuring behavioral responses to something. You certainly would keep track of how frequently something happens or does not happen. People want to know that something worked or has a significant impact. Hard numbers can be the only way to drive that point home. We can illustrate things through text. We can describe the quality of something. We can describe the richness of something. And that oftentimes helps people really believe and feel and connect with what you're talking about. But to drive your point home, frequently we need to give them those hard numbers. What proportion of people are African American or Asian? How many of them were men? How many of them were straight versus gay? How many were high, middle, and low income? And what the likelihood was that they vote or choose not to use assistive technology devices or other things. These kinds of hard numbers really drive your point home. Consider using statistics with formulas that you can learn and then practice them. Oftentimes we're afraid of statistics, but they're usually quite easy to follow, and there are step-by-step guides and basic statistics textbooks, and today all over on the internet. Don't be afraid of them until you at least give it a try and follow the mathematical steps, and maybe even ask someone who's mathematically inclined to help you follow those steps. Adopt programs like SPSS to do the math for you. Frequently, those who do complicated research studies no longer know how to apply the formulas that are needed in their mathematical equations. Instead, they know the data that they need to collect, where do they need to place it within the program, and they just click a button that says do a chi-square or do an ANOVA, analysis of variance, and so on. Method types that get quantitative. It's integral in experiments, surveys, especially those that are questionnaires, evaluation studies, and secondary analysis of statistical data like census data that you use quantitative research methods and data collection. It may be integral in some case studies and in action research. It really depends on the depth, the breadth, and the scope of your project, but it's not uncommon that quantitative research is important in case studies and action research. Quantitative measures can be value added with ethnographies and field work, with interviews, and with secondary analyses of content. For example, if you are reviewing interviews, they may be a part of secondary analyses of content, or they may be interviews you had done yourself in fieldwork, and you realize that there is a common trend occurring, that frequently when people experience a certain thing, they're more likely to express frustration or anger or aggression. And you may notice that it happens at a regular rate, and you want to quantify how frequently or how often that happens. You may take your qualitative data and start counting the frequency of something happening. That would be you taking qualitative data and making an aspect of it quantitative. This can be a very smart and valuable thing to do because readers really do like to learn about these quantitative pieces so they get a real, true, tangible sense for how relevant, how frequent something is, other than us saying the respondent frequently mentioned that they felt anxiety under certain conditions. How frequently? It begs the question. If you've counted that and provided it, you've taken your rich qualitative data and given a quantitative piece